If you've ever walked into a room and felt every eye silently judging you, stay with me. I remember that Monday morning in Chicago. Gray sky, wet streets, the smell of coffee and ambition in the air. The kind of morning that made the city hum quietly, like it knew everyone was pretending to be fine. I remember looking in the mirror and seeing my curls, finally free. They bounced, wild and unapologetic. For years, I'd straightened them, burned them into submission, hidden them beneath buns and blowouts because professional meant polished. And polished meant not me. But that day, I didn't. I let them live. I was Aaliyah Carter, 34, senior marketing manager at Marvell & Company. A woman who'd spent a decade crafting campaigns that made other people feel seen, while slowly erasing herself. And I was tired, not just of hiding, but of shrinking. Of dimming my own light in boardrooms where confidence wore someone else's face and someone else's hair. The glass doors of the office felt colder than usual that morning. They slid open with a hiss that sounded almost like a warning. Inside, the click of heels and hum of chatter quieted for half a second as I walked in. Angela from HR smiled, tight, polite, her eyes flicked up and down. Assessing, cataloging. Ethan from strategy, the guy who once told me my energy was intimidating, gave a faint nod and went back to pretending he wasn't watching. Even the intern, sweet Maya, froze mid-sentence. I adjusted my tote bag, straightened my shoulders, told myself it was nothing. Maybe I was being paranoid, maybe not. Still, every step toward the elevator felt like walking through invisible fog, thick with unspoken questions. The ride to the 19th floor was endless. The mirrored walls reflected not just my face, but the version of me I'd kept tucked away for years. Louder, bolder, defiant. I should have felt proud, liberated, even. But what I felt instead was exposure. Like I had peeled away a layer of armor and walked into battle bare-skinned. The doors opened with a soft chime. 9 a.m., Monday meeting. The scent of burnt coffee. The shuffle of papers. The low murmur of people who already decided who belonged. And for the first time, I wondered, what would happen if I stopped asking for permission to be myself? Right finger if you've ever had that moment too. The quiet rebellion of choosing to show up as you are. This story is for you. Boardroom smells. Polished wood. Ambition. Nerves. 20 of us around the long table. All eyes on Mr. Bradford as he enters. Crisp suit, silver hair, the CEO smile that chills your bones. He starts talking. Brand alignment, client confidence, presentation standards. Normal corporate stuff. Then his eyes find me. Pause. Silence. You could almost hear the clock ticking. Aaliyah, he says, polite, cold, you've changed your look. My stomach twists. Yes, sir, I went natural again. Ah. He tilts his head, bold, but remember, our clients. Our image. A few nervous chuckles. I feel heat rising. Professionalism isn't in the hair, I say, it's in the results. He smiles, colder this time. Of course, just keep our results and image aligned. After the meeting, silence. People who once laughed with me now avoid me. Even Jasmine, my best friend at work, whispers at lunch. Girl, I love your hair, but maybe just tone it down? I wanted to scream, but I just said, tone down my identity? She sighs, don't give them a reason. And in Marvell, reason is code for excuse to push you out. The week passes, subtle. Meetings I led, reassigned. Projects I built, handed to others. Emails, seen, ignored. Client requests, rerouted. Friday. Email from our reminder. Dress code and professional presentation. No greeting, no context, just the PDF. I stare, heart pounding. They're warning me, without words. I don't reply. I just close the laptop. 2 weeks later, Bradford calls me into his office. His assistant won't meet my eyes. I step inside, chair across from him, cold. Aaliyah, we're going in a new direction. Not performance, fit. Fit, I repeat. I'm top 3 in the company for results. Valued contributor, he says carefully, but clients have expectations regarding representation. I laugh. Sharp. Empty. So this is about my hair. He exhales. It's about the brand. Your brand doesn't have a problem with my hair. You do. He flinches. Slight. 3 months severance. Let's keep it professional. I stand, hands trembling, voice steady. Professional is not erasing who I am to make you comfortable. I walk out before he can reply. Packing my desk, each photo, sticky note, mug, whispers the question. Was I ever safe here? Elevator doors close behind me. Reflection again. Same curls, same woman, but something inside me shifted. I wasn't broken. I was done. That night, apartment, lights off, coffee in hand. Scrolling old campaigns I built. Smiles I sold. Energy I poured into a company that saw me as a risk. And for what? I open a blank doc. 4 words. Carter Agency, coming soon. I didn't know then what it would become. I didn't know the sleepless nights, the rejections, the quiet miracles. But one thing I knew. They fired me for my natural hair. And one day, they'd see exactly what that cost them. It had been 3 months since I walked out of Marvell and Company. 3 months of quiet planning, endless nights, and caffeine-fueled determination. I had nothing but a laptop, a few saved contacts, and an unshakable belief. They fired me for my natural hair. I was going to make them regret it. I called it Carter Agency. A small office in a co-working space. Cheap rent, but full of ambition. I hired 2 interns, both brilliant, both black, both ready to challenge the corporate standard. Our first client? A local black-owned beauty brand. They wanted a campaign that celebrated authenticity. I pitched it. Your hair. Your rules. Your power. They said yes. And in that yes, I felt the first flicker of what would become a fire. The weeks turned into months. Campaign after campaign. Our work got noticed. Awards, social media praise, press mentions, small victories stacking into something big. And then, it was time for the move that would truly shake Marvell and Company. Pause. Subtle dramatic swell in piano. I bought a billboard. Not a small one. Not in some side street. Right across from Marvell & Co.'s headquarters. The image? My face. My natural hair, full and untamed. The caption? Bold, clear, unapologetic. Fired for being myself. Now, I lead. I remember standing in front of the billboard that night. Wind whipping around me. City lights flickering. I felt satisfaction, but not the kind that makes you gloat. The kind that comes from doing it right. Smart, legal, unstoppable. The reaction was instant. Emails flooded Marvell. Slack messages from ex-colleagues. Did she really? And the public? They went wild. Hashtags started. Hashtag LetHerLead. Hashtag NaturalHairWins. Local news picked it up. Instagram posts, Twitter threads, TikTok reactions. Within 24 hours, the billboard went viral. Millions of eyes. Suddenly, Marvell & Company was the company that fired a woman for her hair. And the woman was everywhere. Bradford called me. First call, polite, then desperate. Aaliyah, the billboard, it's causing brand issues. I laughed. Soft, controlled. Brand issues? No, Bradford, your brand issue was firing me. He tried to argue, to negotiate. I hung up. Because I wasn't negotiating. I was winning. Then came the clients. One by one, they called Marvell to question their contracts. How did you treat Aaliyah Carter? Do you really think firing creative talent over hair is acceptable? Hundreds of women posted photos of themselves. Curls, afros, twists, braids. Tagged Marvell. Tagged me. Tagged the world. It was like a storm. A beautiful, unstoppable storm. A social movement, born from the simple truth. Your identity is not negotiable. The media frenzy built. News anchors calling. Podcasts inviting me. I gave a few interviews. Carefully. Short, sharp, powerful. They fired me for my natural hair. But I refused to hide. And now, we lead. I could see the fear in Marvell's PR department. They tried to spin it. Apologize. Damage control. Too late. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. A press event. The company had to host it. Invited me. The world watching. Lights, cameras, flashbulbs. Bradford, sweating, beside his podium. He clears his throat. We want to apologize for past decisions. We value diversity. I step forward, calm, collected, hair natural, eyes bright. Microphone live, millions watching online. To young women told they need to change to fit in. You weren't made to fit in. You were made to stand out. The room goes silent. And then, applause. Thunderous. From reporters, interns, employees, everyone watching the live stream. I smile, not because of revenge. But because I stayed true to myself. Because authenticity always wins. The following week, Marvell and Company lost contracts. Clients left, share prices dropped. Board members panicked. Bradford? Quiet, silent. Meanwhile, Carter Agency signed 3 new national campaigns. All celebrating diversity, authenticity, empowerment. And yes, the billboard? It's still there, across the street. A daily reminder that you can't fire someone for being themselves. I remember my mother's words. They can take your job, but never your purpose. She said it once, standing in our tiny kitchen in Detroit, her hands deep in soapy water, the late sun catching the gold band on her finger. I must have been 12, angry because I'd lost something, maybe a spelling bee, maybe a friend. And she looked at me and said, softly but firmly, baby, they can take anything, your title, your comfort, your pride, but never your purpose. That's yours. You protect it. That voice echoed in my head as I walked past the billboard that morning. It was huge, 30 feet tall, right in the middle of downtown Chicago, staring down at the city like a challenge. My face, my curls, my quote. Authenticity isn't rebellion, it's power. Purpose intact, hair intact, power intact. The first time I saw it, I cried, not out of sadness, but release. That billboard wasn't revenge, it was reclamation. It was every late night, every meeting I was talked over in, every quiet moment of doubt turned into proof that I was never the problem. And the world noticed. People stopped me on the street. Women, black, brown, white, all of them, came up with tears in their eyes and said, I showed my daughter your ad. My boss saw it and didn't know what to say. You made me wear my curls to work for the first time in years. Millions saw it, millions shared it. And Marvell and Company? They tried to act like it wasn't about them. A statement was released, vague words about diversity and creative independence. But everyone knew. They couldn't ignore me, they couldn't erase me. And they never will. 6 months have passed since the billboard went up. 6 months since Marvell and Company realized they couldn't silence me, or women like me, any longer. The city has changed since then. Or maybe I have. My mornings feel lighter, my coffee tastes different. People greet me with respect now, not curiosity. And when I walk through those same glass doors, they open not with warning, but with welcome. The wind rattled the doors that morning as I stepped into the office. Coffee in one hand, laptop in the other. The air smelled of fresh paint and quiet redemption. I paused by the reflection on the glass, still me, but freer. No mask, no fear. I took a deep breath and smiled. Because this time, it wasn't about surviving. It was about leading, with purpose, not permission. And that made all the difference. The reactions from part 2? Explosive. Within hours, hashtags flooded the internet. Hashtag LetHerLead. Hashtag NaturalHairWins. Hashtag representation matters. Local news stations, national media, online influencers, everyone was talking about it. Marvell and Company? They scrambled. Emails from panicked executives, texts from board members, calls from clients, all asking for explanations. apologies, damage control. I didn't answer any of it at first. Why? Because I wasn't chasing attention. I was building momentum, quietly, strategically. Aaliyah Carter Agency became a hub for innovation, creativity, and authenticity. Clients loved our campaigns because they told stories that mattered. Stories where identity wasn't hidden, where culture wasn't appropriated, where women didn't have to conform to a mold crafted by outdated corporate standards. One client meeting still sticks with me. A young marketing director, barely 24, looked at me with wide eyes. I never thought a woman like me could lead a national campaign. I smiled. You can, and you will. Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise. Her face lit up. That moment reminded me why this fight mattered. Not the billboard, not the headlines, but the lives we touch. Meanwhile, Marvell and Company continued to struggle. Their clients began withdrawing. One by one. Contracts cancelled, partnerships dissolved. I saw screenshots on my newsfeed, posts from women across the country showing their natural hair, tagging the company, challenging its outdated standards. Is my hair unprofessional too? Do you fire all women like this? Time to celebrate authenticity. The domino effect was astonishing. Social media amplified every story. Traditional media followed. By the end of the quarter, their stock prices dropped significantly. I allowed myself a quiet smirk. Justice wasn't instantaneous, but it was inevitable. Then came the CEO town hall. Bradford had to face his employees and the media. I received an invitation. Not a request, a formal public notice. Carter, your presence is requested to discuss diversity and company values. I prepared for it carefully. Not a speech, not a tantrum. Clarity, precision, truth, power. On the day, cameras rolled. The auditorium was packed. Employees, reporters, cameras streaming live. Bradford began nervously. We recognize past mistakes. Diversity is important. Inclusion is. I stepped forward, calm, measured, hair natural, eyes bright. Microphone live, millions online. To young women who are told they need to change to fit in. You weren't made to fit in. You were made to stand out. Applause. Thunderous. Uplifting. Employees standing. Reporters typing furiously. The interns who once shadowed me at Marvell cried. And I smiled, not out of arrogance, but because truth, authenticity, and hard work always resonate. After the town hall, my life changed forever. I became a mentor for young women of color. Not just in marketing, but in leadership, identity, and personal power. Emails from across the country. Thank you for being an example. I feel seen for the first time at work. I will not change myself for them anymore. I started weekly online sessions, Carter Coaching Circle. Women logging in from Atlanta, Detroit, New York, Los Angeles. Sharing stories, teaching strategy, celebrating authenticity. And the best part? The energy. It was contagious. Marvell and Company? They tried rebranding. They hired consultants, created diversity initiatives, posted press releases. But the public had already seen the truth. And truth has a memory. I received a call from a former board member. Aaliyah, they underestimated you. Completely. I smiled. Yes, they did. And now, I lead. Months passed. Carter Agency expanded. Billboards across the country. Award ceremonies. Features in major publications. But it wasn't just about recognition. It was about impact. The women we lifted, the conversations we sparked, the culture we challenged. And every time I passed that first billboard, the one right across from Marvell's headquarters, I remembered my mother's words. They can take your job, but never your purpose. And yes, I whispered it to myself, smiling, standing tall. Purpose intact, hair intact, power intact. The lessons? Crystal clear. Stand firm in who you are. Strategize smarter, not louder. Use the system, media, investors, public opinion, to amplify truth. Build your own empire. Mentor others, because your impact multiplies. By the end of part 3, millions had seen my story. Millions were inspired. And the company that once fired me? They couldn't ignore me. They couldn't erase me. And they never will. It was a year after the billboard went up. A year since Marvell and company tried to erase me. A year since I decided my curls, my natural self, were non-negotiable. I had built Carter Agency into something beyond anything I imagined. Not just a company, a movement, a hub of creativity, strategy, and empowerment. The morning began as usual. Coffee in hand, laptop open, calendar packed. But this day, something felt electric. Messages on my phone, emails marked urgent, social media notifications flooding. The world was waking up to a storm I had quietly orchestrated. Our first move this year was national. Not regional, not local. We secured a campaign with a Fortune 500 company, one that had quietly been observing our rise. The brief was simple. Transform their marketing to embrace authentic representation of women of color. They wanted impact. They wanted honesty. I told them, we don't just sell products. We sell truth, and authenticity always wins. The campaign launched. Viral within days. Billboards, social media, press coverage, influencer collaborations, millions engaged. But I didn't stop there. I created a mentorship program. Named it Carter Circle. Every month, young women from all over the country joined virtually, sharing struggles, strategies, and victories. We celebrated curls, braids, afros, twists, and confidence. The energy was electric, contagious, transformational. Of course, not everyone cheered. Marvell and company wasn't finished. Bradford had been trying to rebuild the company's image. PR campaigns, diversity posters, inclusive initiatives. But the public? Skeptical, cynical, watching closely. One morning, I received a private email. They're trying to discredit you. They've hired a consultant to question your campaigns, your results, your reputation. I smiled. They had learned nothing. They thought their corporate tactics could intimidate me. Instead, they became part of the story. I was invited to a major marketing conference in New York. Panel discussion. Authenticity in corporate branding. Marvell and company had a team presenting in the same panel. Direct challenge. Directly across from me, lights, cameras, hundreds of attendees, streamed online. Bradford strutted in, confident, smiling, polished. The moderator introduced us. Marvell team spoke first. Smooth, rehearsed slides, diversity statistics, corporate jargon. Then it was my turn. I leaned into the microphone. Pause. Smile. I looked directly at the cameras. Millions watching live. They fired me for my hair. They thought it was unprofessional. But here's the truth. Professionalism is not conformity. Authenticity is power. And power cannot be silenced. The room went silent. Then applause. Not polite, not corporate, thunderous, emotional, uplifting. I watched as people pulled out phones. Streamed, posted, social media exploded. The story spread faster than any billboard, any press release could. The next week, one of Marvell's top clients publicly announced, "We refuse to work with companies that discriminate against talent. Authenticity matters." Immediately, Marvell lost multiple accounts. Board members were in crisis meetings. Shares dropped further. The public commentary? Unstoppable. Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. Millions of posts with hashtag LetHerLead. Hashtag NaturalHairWins. Hashtag authenticity is power. It wasn't just marketing. It was a cultural movement. I realized something important. This wasn't just about me. This was bigger than the billboard. Bigger than Marvell and company. This was about creating a legacy. I doubled down on mentorship. Every young woman who felt unseen, silenced, or pressured to conform became part of the Carter Circle. Workshops, webinars, one-on-one sessions, sharing strategies, how to navigate corporate microaggressions, how to use social media to amplify your voice, how to build your own empire without compromise. Emails flooded in. Thank you. I finally feel seen. Your story gave me courage to speak up. I'm starting my own initiative thanks to you. And each message reminded me why I fought. Why every sleepless night, every strategic move mattered. Despite the victories, there were quiet nights, moments when doubt crept in. The weight of responsibility, the scrutiny. I would sit in my apartment, soft music playing, reflecting. I'd call my mother. Baby, they can take your job, but never your purpose. Her words anchored me. They reminded me, power isn't just external, it's internal. And with that internal power, I could move mountains. Marvell and Company tried one last move, a public campaign claiming they embraced diversity. Carefully avoiding naming me, I responded strategically. I released a documentary-style video of the journey, fired for my natural hair. Building Carter Agency, mentoring hundreds of women, taking over billboards, campaigns, and cultural conversations. The signature line. They tried to silence me. But you cannot erase purpose, authenticity, or power. Stand out, always. The video went viral within hours. Millions viewed, shared, inspired. The company that once fired me? Humiliated again, publicly, and this time, there was no turning back. By the end of the year, Carter Agency expanded nationwide. Thousands of women inspired, mentored, and empowered. Marvell and Company became a case study in how corporate short-sightedness can destroy itself. I walked past the original billboard one evening. City lights reflecting off glass. Wind in my curls. I smiled. Purpose intact. Power intact. Empire intact. Mother's words echoed. They can take your job, but never your purpose. And I whispered to myself, no one can. Not now. Not ever. This is how triumph feels. Not in shouting. Not in anger. But in strategy, courage, and unwavering authenticity. Millions saw it. Millions shared it. And the company that once fired me? They couldn't ignore me. They couldn't erase me. And they never will. It was the first week of the new year, and Carter Agency had officially become a name people associated with courage, authenticity, and innovation. Walking into the office, I felt it in the air, a quiet hum of energy, ambition, and pride. Every face in the room reflected the same determination I had felt when I first stepped into Marvell and Company. That determination had grown, multiplied, and now powered an entire movement. Months of viral campaigns, billboards, mentorship programs, and media coverage had transformed our world. Women across the country were reaching out, sharing their own stories of discrimination, resilience, and triumph. Every email, every comment reminded me why the fight had begun. It wasn't about me, it was about visibility, representation, and power. I remembered the early days when I first leaked the story to journalists. When the hashtag #LetHerLead started to trend, how naive it had felt at the time, thinking a single action could ripple into a revolution. Yet here I was, seeing the full impact of that first spark. The billboard across from Marvell and Company was no longer just an image of me, it had become a symbol. A challenge, a call to action. One morning, I received a call that made my pulse race. It was a former client of Marvell and Company, one of the largest in the country. They were officially moving all their campaigns to Carter Agency. Their message was clear. They wanted authenticity, not corporate conformity. Not just that, they were offering to partner on national mentorship programs, co-branded campaigns, and educational initiatives for young women of color. I smiled and whispered the words my mother had repeated countless times, they can take your job, but never your purpose. I realized then that purpose was no longer a personal mantra. It was a national movement. It had a life of its own. The press caught wind of this partnership. Articles, podcasts, and TV segments began framing Carter Agency as not just a creative powerhouse but a symbol of justice and empowerment. Headlines read, "Fired for her hair. Now leading a movement. From corporate victim to national icon. Curls, confidence, and conquest." It was surreal, watching something I had built quietly in my apartment take on a life of its own. Then came the invitation I had anticipated but never dared hope for, a speaking engagement at a major international conference on leadership, diversity, and creativity. Hundreds in the room, thousands watching online, and there, front and center, was a question I knew would come. Aaliyah, what advice would you give to young women facing discrimination in corporate America? I paused, a breath, a glance at the audience, bright, Eager faces. Some nervous. Some defiant. Millions more would be watching online. You don't have to conform to someone else's idea of professionalism. You don't have to dim your brilliance or hide your identity. The world may try to silence you, but your authenticity is your superpower. Stand tall. Stand proud. Stand out. The room erupted. The applause. The cheers. The emotional sobs. It was overwhelming. But this time, it wasn't just satisfaction. It was a shared triumph. A catharsis. The culmination of every risk. Every sleepless night. Every calculated move. And every ounce of courage. Meanwhile, Marvell and Company struggled to rebuild credibility. They released statements, held diversity workshops, and attempted damage control, but the public memory was unyielding. Every article, every viral post, every share reminded them and the world that they had fired a brilliant woman for her hair. And the world had chosen to amplify her voice instead. One evening, as the city lights glimmered through my office window, I reflected on the journey. I thought about Rebecca, the colleague who had betrayed me under the guise of friendship. I thought about Bradford, who underestimated me at every turn. I thought about the countless women who had shared their struggles, their fears, and their victories. Every challenge, every betrayal, every setback had been a thread in the fabric of a larger story. A story that now had no end but endless impact. The mentorship program had grown beyond virtual sessions. Women from all over the country began starting their own local initiatives. Social media campaigns inspired schools to embrace natural hairstyles. Corporate boards began revising policies. Influenced by the movement we had ignited, authenticity had become a demand, not a preference. And then, in a quiet, almost private moment, I walked past the first billboard that had started it all. Wind tousling my curls, city lights reflecting. I smiled. I whispered to the night sky. Purpose intact, power intact, legacy begun. Because this wasn't just my story anymore. It belonged to everyone who had been told they didn't belong. That they weren't professional enough. That they needed to change to fit in. We had changed the narrative. We had flipped the script. We had turned humiliation into triumph. Discrimination into empowerment. And rejection into influence. The final lesson. The final signature line. The one I knew would resonate for generations. Was simple. They can take your job. They can take your office. But they can never take your purpose. Your voice. Or your power. Stand out. Always. And in that moment, with city lights twinkling and the energy of a movement behind me, I understood something fundamental. True victory isn't measured by revenge or wealth. It's measured by the lives you touch. The voices you amplify. And the courage you inspire. Millions had watched. Millions shared. Millions were empowered. And Marvell and Company? They were a footnote in a story that had become larger than any one company. Any one person. Any one setback. This was legacy. This was triumph. This was what happens when authenticity refuses to be silenced. As I walked through the city streets, wind catching the curls I had once been told were unprofessional, I thought about everything that had led me here. Every sleepless night. Every betrayal. Every calculated move. Every moment I had chosen authenticity over conformity. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every woman. Every person who had been told they didn't belong. Who had been asked to change who they were to fit in. I remembered my mother's words, whispered over the phone late at night when I felt broken and exhausted. Baby, they can take your job, but never your purpose. That phrase had guided me from the moment Marvell and Company tried to erase me. And now, I realized it wasn't just guidance, it was a mantra for life. Purpose, authenticity, and integrity were more than personal victories. They were tools for building something far greater than any corporate title or paycheck. I sat at my desk that morning, reviewing the countless emails from young women and men who had shared their stories with me. Stories of microaggressions, discrimination, betrayal, but also of courage, resilience, and transformation. Some were students. Some were early career professionals. Some were leaders in their own communities. Every message carried a lesson. Integrity matters. Being true to yourself matters. Living honestly, without deception or compromise, matters more than any immediate reward. Because the truth is, life has a way of rewarding those who choose the harder, but right path, those who choose not to steal, not to cheat, not to compromise their values for short-term gain often discover a deeper, lasting satisfaction. And that satisfaction comes in many forms: respect, self-worth, genuine connections, and sometimes, the ripple effect of inspiring others to do the same. I thought about my journey, the smart strategies, the viral campaigns, the mentorship programs, but beneath every success was one constant: I never wavered in my authenticity. I never allowed the fear of judgment to shape my choices. I never stole someone else's ideas to get ahead. I lived, worked, and led with integrity, and every time I did, doors opened, trust grew, and my community expanded. And that, I realized, was the most important lesson of all. The victories, the billboards, the viral moments, they were incredible. Yes, but they would have meant nothing if I had achieved them by compromising who I was. Integrity isn't just a moral choice, it's a strategy for life. It builds credibility, trust, and respect. It allows you to sleep at night with pride in your own actions. It allows you to rise, over and over, with clarity and confidence. So, I want you to pause for a moment and think about yourself. How often have you been tempted to take the easy path, the dishonest path, the path that feels like it will give you immediate gain but cost you your soul? How often have you felt pressured to hide who you are, to dim your light, to compromise your purpose? Here's the truth. You deserve better. You deserve to live authentically. To wake up each morning and know that you are enough, not because the world said so, but because your heart knows so. You deserve to speak your truth without fear of judgment, to walk into any room and feel no need to shrink. You deserve to embrace your identity fully, the history that shaped you, the culture that raised you, and the roots that still whisper your name when the world gets loud. You deserve to act with integrity, to choose what's right even when it's not easy, to work with honesty even when shortcuts look tempting, and to stand by your values even when others bend theirs. Because integrity isn't just a virtue, it's an inheritance. It's what our grandparents built their lives on. It's the reason our families stayed strong through hardship. It's the quiet rhythm that beats beneath every story of resilience our culture carries. The world may not always recognize it immediately, but those choices, those small, good, honest choices, they compound. They build your legacy. They build your influence. They build your power. And when your power comes from truth, it lasts. Maybe you were told once that you didn't belong, that your accent was too thick, that your traditions were too old, that your dreams were too big. But here's what I've learned. What they call too much is usually just real. And real always outlasts the fake. So here's what I want you to do. If you've ever been told to tone yourself down, if you've ever been asked to compromise your values, if you've ever felt invisible because of who you are, share your story. Comment below. Tag someone who needs to hear this. Remind them that there is strength in sincerity. Because every story adds to the movement. Every voice strengthens the message. You can be powerful and authentic. You can be successful and humble. You can lead and stay kind. Subscribe if you want to join this community, a space where authenticity, courage, and integrity are not just words, but daily practice. Together, we can create a world where standing out isn't a risk, it's a right. Where being honest isn't a weakness, it's our superpower. Where we celebrate the quiet dignity of people who rise without stepping on others, who build without breaking, and who lead without losing themselves. Because the final lesson, the one I carry with me every single day, is simple but profound. Be true, be honest, be fearless. Live in a way that would make your ancestors proud. Carry your culture not as a burden, but as a crown. And let the world see that success built on integrity is the only kind that lasts. I think back to the first billboard, the first viral moment, the first mentorship session with a young woman who whispered, "I didn't think I could be myself and still succeed." None of those would have mattered if I hadn't chosen, again and again, to be real. Now, standing at the center of a movement, Seeing lives transformed and hearts awakened. I finally understand. Victory isn't in revenge, money, or recognition. It's in knowing your choices made the world softer, braver, and better. So take a deep breath. Look at yourself in the mirror. Smile at the person you see, because she's not perfect, but she's powerful. You are enough. You are worthy. You are capable. And the world is waiting for you to show up, exactly as you are. Stand tall. Speak truth. Honor your roots. Live authentically. And never, ever compromise your integrity, because that's where your true power lives. Right finger if this spoke to you. Don't scroll away. Share it. Someone out there needs to be reminded that staying true is not weakness. It's legacy.